Welcome back to Movie Recaps. Today I will show you a thriller, sci-fi film from 2018, titled Elizabeth Harvest. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. In the middle of a car ride through the mountains, Elizabeth wakes up after dreaming she would find a brilliant man that would take her into a secret world of their own. That man is the one driving, Dr. Henry Kellenberg, her new husband. When they make it to his house, he introduces her to the servant Claire Stratton and his son Oliver, who is blind. Then they have a huge dinner before retiring to their bedroom to enjoy their first night as a married couple. The next morning, Henry shows her around the house, which has dozens of rooms. These rooms have a special lock that can only be entered by scanning your thumb, and they're all programmed to recognize both Elizabeth's and Henry's. There's one room she isn't allowed to enter, however, and Henry makes her promise she won't before getting busy with her right there in the hallway, which Claire sees. Later, Henry tells her he'll leave first thing in the morning because work calls. The next day, Elizabeth is approached by Claire to ask about lunch. She takes this chance to ask about Henry, because she's seen his Nobel Prize and now she wonders why such a brilliant man would marry a simple woman like her. Claire simply replies she doesn't know before leaving. When night falls, Elizabeth can't help noticing through the window that Claire and Oliver are leaving the house in the middle of the night. No matter how hard she tries, Elizabeth can't sleep, so she finally goes to see what is inside the forbidden room. There, she finds some kind of lab with a set of strange machines. She opens one of these machines and is shocked to find a sleeping body inside it that looks just like her. Freaking out, Elizabeth runs out of the room after bumping into a tray, which causes her to get a cut on her finger. After putting a band-aid on the cut, she tries to make a phone call, but the line is dead. Eventually, she falls asleep and doesn't wake up until noon. The next day, Elizabeth can't help feeling awkward around Henry. After talking about their days, Elizabeth tells him about the phone, and Henry replies it's very common for it not to work in that area. In return, he asks about the finger, so she says it was just an accident before he takes her to their bedroom to spend all day in bed. Elizabeth doesn't enjoy it and ends up crying. In the middle of the night, Henry gets out of bed and Elizabeth follows him. She barely gets to reach the stairs when Henry finds her and tells her she'll have to be punished for having disobeyed him. Then he reveals a machete and begins chasing her around the house. Elizabeth tries to get out, but the locks won't accept her thumb anymore. She hides in the wine cellar, which Henry enters then leaves when he doesn't see her, going to wait in the living room. When Elizabeth finally comes out, she finds the living room empty, so grabs a fire poker and tries to go upstairs, but Henry is hidden behind them. He grabs her ankle to make her slip, then comes out to murder her with the machete. The next morning, Claire and Oliver help him bury the body in the woods before the three of them have breakfast together like equals. Claire demands Henry to stop all this before he gets caught, but he refuses. In the afternoon, he's visited by his friend Frank Logan, a detective. After telling him Elizabeth is sleeping, Henry asks Frank what's troubling him, and Frank confesses he's worried because his department is being investigated for having accepted payoffs. Frank has been spared, but some of his friends haven't, and he'll have to testify against them. Henry's only answer for this is that it's better to be the torturer than to be tortured, which Frank finds very cold. Meanwhile, Claire is writing her journal when she's interrupted by Oliver, who has brought her some flowers. Claire turns them down and asks him to stop bringing her gifts, but Olive asks her why she stays if she is so unhappy. She says it's because she knows things, but Oliver thinks she stays because she loves Henry. After sending him away, Claire takes her pills. 6 weeks later, in the middle of a car ride through the mountains, Elizabeth wakes up after dreaming she would find a brilliant man that would take her into a secret world of their own. Her wedding dress is different, but the routine is the same. Henry introduces her to the family, shows her around the house while Claire watches from afar, makes her promise she won't go into the forbidden room, and after dinner and dancing, they spend their first married night together. Before they fall asleep, Henry tells him he'll have to leave next for work-related reasons. Elizabeth, however, can't sleep, so she goes to the kitchen, where she finds Claire smoking. She tells her she wants to know more about Claire herself, but when Claire is about to tell her something, they're interrupted by Henry, who takes her back to the bed. The next morning, Elizabeth finds herself alone in the house. After wandering around for a while, she finally gives in and enters the forbidden room. She discovers the copy of herself in the machine and runs away, but this time, the capsule opens and the other Elizabeth comes out and goes after her. The copy finds Elizabeth sleeping, so after checking through the window that Claire and Oliver are gone, she proceeds to touch Elizabeth's face and pull up her pajama top. The next day, Elizabeth wakes up at noon again and finds herself with her clothes pulled. Henry finds her and asks her if she's fine, so she goes to the bathroom to wash. Henry tries to follow her, but no matter how hard Elizabeth tries to keep the door closed, Henry comes in anyway and grabs a towel. When hearing him say she's disobeyed him, Elizabeth tries to run away, but Henry quickly makes her fall and begins choking her with a towel. After some struggling, she manages to kick him off before running again, only to find that the exit door lock won't accept her thumb. Since the windows are also unbreakable, Elizabeth rushes to the kitchen to grab some knives while Henry pours an anesthetic on a piece of cloth. Next, Henry goes to the living room to play the piano, Then he leaves a recording playing to make Elizabeth thinks it's still him. The plan works. She leaves her hiding spot in the kitchen and Henry appears behind her, putting the cloth against her nose and mouth. Elizabeth struggles against him until she falls asleep, but it turns out it's all a ruse to make him lower his guard. She soon opens her eyes and throws her arm over her shoulder, stabbing Henry and effectively killing him. Both of them fall to the floor, and as Henry bleeds out, the anesthetic kicks in and Elizabeth falls asleep. When she wakes up hours later, she drags Henry's body to the door and tries to use his fingers to open the lock, but it won't work. Next she cleans the floor, covers Henry's body with his jacket to hide it, takes a shower and takes her wedding ring off, then burns her bloody pajamas. Later, she's napping on the couch when she's suddenly awoken by a ringing phone. It's Henry's mobile, which shows many lost calls from Claire. Elizabeth calls 911 and tells them she's locked in her own house, but she doesn't know the address. Sadly, before she can give them any more information, Claire and Oliver come back, so Elizabeth hangs up and pretends to have been reading all along. The pair is shocked to find her there, and even more surprised to hear her say Henry is upstairs sleeping. This makes Claire very nervous, so she barely gets to walk into the kitchen before she has a heart attack. She manages to call 911 with her own phone before passing out, and an ambulance comes to pick her up soon after. Elizabeth wants to use that chance to leave too, but Oliver stops her, telling her that if she leaves, he can't protect her from the police. He knows Henry is dead and believes Claire when she says she did it in self-defense, even reciting the secret world phrase she dreamed about before he asks her to show him where the body is. Together they take it to the incinerator, where Oliver asks Elizabeth questions about her past. When she was a child, she was sick a lot in the hospital. Her parents died in a car crash and she was brought up in an orphanage. Oliver tells her those memories happened in the other house nearby where he and Claire sleep. She was there until age 8. While Claire would be better at explaining this since she was part of the experiment, Oliver still tries, so he tells her she's been cooked in the forbidden room like an egg. 6 identically genetic copies were made, and she is number 5 of the Elizabeth harvest. At that moment, they see Frank's car coming, so Oliver quickly gives her some information to handle it. Elizabeth has met him before once, and Henry explained her not being around much by saying she had a sleep disorder. She receives Frank in the living room, telling him Henry is napping because he wasn't feeling well. While Oliver goes to fetch them some water, Frank asks her if she's okay because he's heard about the call she made to 911. Oliver comes back and tells him it was Claire that called when she had the heart attack, a lie Elizabeth goes along with. As Oliver leaves the room to grab something else, Frank points out how strange it is everyone in this house has a problem. Elizabeth and her sleep disorder, Claire and her weak heart, Oliver is blind, and now Henry isn't feeling well either. However, he suddenly falls dead when Oliver comes back with a rifle and shoots him. He explains to Elizabeth that Henry has been paying Frank off since he caught another Elizabeth and brought her back home 3 years ago. Henry killed that Elizabeth too, like he did with every clone up to today. After Elizabeth turned 8 she was put back in the tank, which is why she has a gap in her memory. She would only be brought out for physical therapy and to fill her mind with memories and events, also to customize her personality. Elizabeth wants to hear no more about the experiment, so once again, she helps Oliver take the body to the incinerator. Afterward, Oliver tells her to get a bag with clothes and some money from the safe ready so Elizabeth can escape. Before she can leave however, he asks her to read Claire's journal because he can't and needs some important information from there, then proceeds to lock Elizabeth up until the reading is done. Seeing as she doesn't have anything else to do, she begins reading the journal to learn how it all started. Everyone knew of Henry's breakthroughs in cell research, and he retired a billionaire after patenting some very important cell processes. 5 years ago, out of the blue, he invited Claire to his house. He knew about her work in neurodegeneration, so now he wanted her to work for him. He took her to the forbidden room and showed her the clones he made of his wife, Elizabeth, who died while giving birth to Oliver of a very rare strain of Werner syndrome. Henry took her DNA and cloned her, managing to make 6 identical copies, but the first 2 already showed complications at birth that quickly died, so he decided to put the other 4 into cryogenic sleep until someone found a cure. That was Claire's job. She refused at first because of ethics, but Henry quickly convinced her when he explained the unique scientific opportunity she would have. 2 years later, Claire cracked the code, so they began working on putting memories into the clone's mind. The third Elizabeth woke up physically healthy, but also disoriented and unable to remember things for long. Days later, Elizabeth discovered the harvest room and ran away. That was when Frank found her. He took her back to the house, where they pretended she was Claire's niece who had mental issues. Still, Frank had to fill in a report, so Henry paid him off to keep it all a secret. At that moment, Oliver interrupts her reading when he comes over to bring her some food. He apologizes for having locked her, but he promises they're on the same side. Elizabeth still jumps on him as soon as he opens the door and asks her for the door code before tying him up with his own belt so he can't escape. She tries the code on the door but Oliver had been lying, and when she goes to check on him, he had already escaped. After stopping by the kitchen to grab a knife, Elizabeth goes to the harvest room, where she finds Oliver giving the final clone physical therapy to keep her alive. He swears he'll let her go after she finishes reading the journal. Then when she comes closer to look at the clone, she puts her to sleep by injecting some anesthetic on her neck. After dreaming about the thing both her and the other clones went through, Elizabeth wakes up in her room, chained to the furniture and with some food left by Oliver. Trying to get the chain off is pointless, so she goes back to reading the journal. Once Frank had been paid off, Henry and Claire continued with their tests, but a few days later, the third Elizabeth died of suffocation. Henry said he found her face down on the pillows, but Claire didn't believe him, yet she still asked no questions. After discovering her condition had returned, they buried her in the woods before going back to doing more research. 6 months passed until they exhausted every combination, so now that Henry was started to lose hope, Claire finally went for it and spent the night with him. After they were done, Henry said he wanted to turn off the machines because they weren't working, although Claire didn't agree. Back in the present, Oliver brings more food and offers Elizabeth an exchange of information. Elizabeth tells him Claire never mentions him and that she started an affair with Henry after she failed to crack the code, but Oliver corrects her. She never failed, Henry corrupted the samples. In return, Oliver tells her that yes, she's cured, and that all the clones lived there at 8 while he had been away in boarding school. He returned when he was 12 and met the second Elizabeth, who he thought was the prettiest person, because he wasn't blind back then. They quickly became friends, but Henry couldn't stand it, so in a fit of jealousy, he attacked Oliver in his sleep and made him blind. After mentioning how he hated seeing Henry and Elizabeth together, he leaves the room, so Elizabeth goes back to reading the journal. Claire broke up the affair when she realized she could never replace Elizabeth, who Henry wouldn't stop talking about. When she asked him what he really wanted, he admitted he wanted to relive his wedding night over and over to experience that euphoria again. At first, Claire didn't want to help him, but since she couldn't bring herself to leave either, she ended up assisting in bringing Elizabeth IV to life. While working on her body, she mentioned how she could never find records of Elizabeth giving birth and implied Oliver was a clone of Henry's, to which Henry replied that he always worried Elizabeth would want the young boy she fell in love with, not this older version. Current Elizabeth is too upset by this news and leaves the journal for a while. After 2 days of not being around, Oliver wakes her up with scissors on her neck and a bleeding hand, refusing to explain where he had gone. Elizabeth proceeds to tell him the information he wants. Claire thought he was a clone, but Henry showed her the birth certificate and made her call a doctor, so Olive is Henry's son and now he can be whatever he wants. Not knowing how to handle these facts, Oliver gets off her, but Elizabeth has guessed he loves her, so she convinces him to come closer while promising they can be together now. As soon as he approaches her, she pushes him away, takes away the scissors and the key for the chain, and asks for the real door code. When she furiously begins kicking him, she's suddenly interrupted by the sixth and final Elizabeth clone, who has the rifle with her, is wearing a wedding dress and calls Oliver Henry. Elizabeth V tries to tell her Oliver is the bad guy, but Six believes him over her and makes her drop on the floor, giving her the chance to recover the scissors and stab Oliver's leg with them. Then she grabs Oliver as a hostage, but this isn't enough to stop Elizabeth VI, who shoots the rifle, killing Oliver and hurting her previous clone. Elizabeth V rushes out of the room and finally opens the door with the right code, but as soon as she steps outside, Elizabeth VI shows up and shoots her again. Before dying, V tells her to read Claire's diary to know the truth. After washing and changing into new clothes, Elizabeth VI decides to read the journal while having breakfast. The night Henry killed Elizabeth IV with a machete, Claire had heard her scream and went to see what was going on. Instead of explaining, Henry told her he's redone her contract and changed the name on all his assets so they belong to Claire now, that way she could continue her research. Claire threatened to call the police, but Henry pointed out nobody would believe her because Elizabeth was already dead to the world. She had given herself to Henry in marriage and then she died, but now she gave him joy out of the reach of the law by letting him kill her over and over. He felt no shame about it because these copies never felt like the real Elizabeth. Claire asked him to stop, and Henry promised to try his best. Back in the present, Claire comes back from the hospital and bumps into Elizabeth at the door, who has a packed bag ready to go. She gives Claire the journal and tells her she's earned the house and the money, so she better does something good with it. Then she leaves, finally free and awake from everything that had been imposed into her head. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.